Hello, everybody, and welcome to Progress Monitoring Session 2. During our first session, we focused on just getting a data point at the beginning of the year. Students hadn't been with us in person since March, and we needed to know how they were progressing towards their IEP goals and also where to start with them this school year instructionally. So that was just getting a data point on your goal as it was or still is written, no changes. Today, we're going to shift our focus to writing goals because when a goal is well written, it is much easier to progress monitor. And we are all about making things easier for teachers if we can. This professional learning today is brought to you by the SPED Coach team, which includes Becky Branch, Robin Wolf, Missy Butler, Lisa Odoricio, Beth Tudor, and myself. You'll notice that there's a tiny URL down in the bottom corner. Feel free to type that in, and you'll get a copy of this presentation to use as we go through. You can follow along. I'm going to turn off my camera now and move into the content. The information for today came from a manual that CDE has on writing standard aligned IEPs. So we're going to be taking that right from that manual and adapting it as we go for us to use here in Jeffco. So if you want to reference that manual directly, it is linked at the end of this presentation. And you can definitely feel free to pause this presentation at any time to take notes, reflect, or practice. So 5 objectives today. We're going to talk about how to prioritize goals and use Bridge to Curriculum and proficiency skills to help you identify them. We're going to discuss what a SMART goal is and how to write them using the ABCD framework. After that, we're going to look at some sample academic and functional goals at both the elementary and secondary levels. The first step to a well-written goal is to determine the critical or essential needs for the student. You'll be able to determine what is essential for a student after you know what the student is already able to do and what gaps they may have in relationship to the grade level standards. After you've collected the data, evaluated it, and put it into the present levels, you're going to be able to figure out what the critical needs are in order to write the annual goals. In this image, you can think of the blue thread as your present levels, which then lead to the different avenues, which could be your different goals. So the present levels should drive all goal decisions. And if writing present levels is something that you want to work on a little bit more, know that the coaches are going to be tackling that topic too and making a webinar for that. So keep an eye out for that. So the purpose of a well-written goal is to help you and the student understand what the target is, how you're going to get there, and how you'll know if you've hit it or not. When that's clear, it is much easier to progress monitor. And know that you don't need to write a goal for every skill that a student has. Instead, focus on the skills that are essential, that are challenging, but attainable, and are essential for them to participate in general education and are important to them for long-term success. It can be helpful to think of what a student will need to be successful beyond high school to determine essential goals. The intention of choosing these essential annual goals is to narrow or close the gap that a student has in relation to their grade level standards. And you can use the prioritized standards within Bridge to Curriculum to help with this, and I'm going to demonstrate how to do that soon. But first, here is a critical statement from CDE. The goals will be based on the team's best estimate of how far a student can reasonably advance, given specially designed instruction and accommodations within the year that the IEP is in place. We like this because it highlights that it's a team working collaboratively together and thinking really carefully about what is realistic for a student. The aim in writing annual goals is not to recreate an alternate curriculum for the student, it's to define the skills that need to be targeted for specialized instruction to narrow or close the gap in order for the student to meaningfully access and participate in their grade level curriculum. And this can include the accommodations and modifications that a student might need. Let's look at how to find the prioritized standards. You'll notice that this is a process. You're going to log into Bridge to Curriculum, select the curriculum library and year at a glance, click on the unit, then the proficiency scale, and review the criteria for a level 3. Let me walk you through how to do that. So first, you need to log into Jeffco if you haven't already done that for the day, so you can get past their firewall. Then choose Login Links and Bridge to Curriculum and sign in there. Okay, this might look differently for you based on the grades that you're teaching. If you already have your year at a glances pulled up, you might see that here, and if you don't, you may not see that here. I'm still in the process of building mine. I'm teaching third grade this year, so I have math for third grade uploaded here for easy reference in the future. But if you don't have anything there, that is okay. Where I want you to focus your attention is on the curriculum library and year at a glance. This is where the gold is. Notice that you can filter. I'm going to filter by just third grade in this case, because that's who I'm writing an IEP for. And I need it in just math, but do notice that all the other content areas are here. So there's standards for everything. So grade 3 math, I'm going to click on that notebook on the far left, which will take me into the actual year at a glance. Take a minute and look at this year, all of the units over this year. Okay, I don't know if you noticed this too, but I'm seeing multiplication and division in a lot of the units. And then when I'm looking at the other units, I'm thinking that multiplication will probably be involved in these units too. You definitely need multiplication and division when you're doing fractions, area, word problems, and potentially measurement, time, and graphs. So already I'm kind of leaning toward multiplication and division. So now I'm going to look to see if it's a prioritized standard. To do that, you click into any unit, and on the first page, on the overview page, you're going to see these proficiency scale links. I'm going to look at multiplication to begin with. So you click on that link, there's going to be one more here to get the full document. And you'll notice that it's a scale. They even have a student-friendly scale. But for our purposes of goal writing, look at a level 3 and what a student should be able to do. I'm looking at M1, which is fluently multiply within 100 using strategies such as the relationship between multiplication and division or properties of operations. So this is reinforcing my intuition that I should focus on multiplication and division for this student. So I am going to choose that for this student. This is just great to look at too, so you know at all the different levels what a student should be able to do. But focus on a level 3 and think about what accommodations and modifications a student might need in order to access this standard. So know that the prioritized standards were created to make life easier for you, because as we know, these units can be really deep and complex, and picking out the most important standards can be time consuming. So a big team from Jeffco partnered with some Marzano representatives, and they did this work to get the first 2 units of every content completed. So meaning that the first 2 units have the proficiency scale. So you can go in there and see what is most important for this unit instead of trying to dig through that on your own. So those are prioritized standards. And back in our presentation, you'll notice that these are just icons to remind you of that process. Okay, we are now ready to talk about writing measurable goals. There are academic goals that align to standards, and then there are functional goals. Academic goals refer to the Colorado academic standards of the student's enrolled grade level. Goals should always be written for the student's current grade level, which is a standards-based IEP. These are the standards that every student at every level are expected to engage in during the school year. And so, for example, a 5th grade student working toward a 1st grade standard does not necessarily encourage growth, nor does it connect them to what their peers are learning. And then functional goals may include skills that are supported by or taught within our related service providers, such as OT, PT, speech and language, or mental health. A related service goal can be linked to and support an academic goal. The expectation in Jeffco is that it does tie to a standard. And so there are academic standards, and then wellness standards are also located in bridge to curriculum. Something to note is that early childhood educators will work on both academic and functional goals. Okay, whether you are writing an academic or functional goal, you can create it using the SMART goal acronym. A SMART goal is a commonly used acronym to represent the process of developing specific and measurable annual goals. And a fun fact, we stole this from the business world. It was originally created in 1981 for a way for businesses to write their goals that were more specific and measurable. We took it and we adapted it for education. So let's dive into what each letter stands for. So S is for specific, meaning you want a clear description of the knowledge and skills to be taught. For example, Brandy will become a better reader is not very specific. And changing it to Brandy will be able to read a grade level passage at 110 correct words per minute with at least 90% accuracy is much more specific. An M for measurable, meaning you can count it or you can observe it. Lisa will be able to solve math problems is not measurable, whereas Lisa will be able to solve math problems that involve computation with decimals with at least 75% accuracy in 4 out of 5 trials is measurable. An A is for attainable. It must be something realistic for the student. For example, Missy will write a grade level personal narrative with no spelling errors or grammatical errors. Making 0 mistakes is typically not realistic for most students in a class, so we don't want to make that the expectation for her. And R is for relevant or rewarding for the student. Think about how meeting this goal is going to help them with long-term success, meaningfully participating in gen ed and fostering their motivation. And T is for timely. IEP goals are time bound. We have 1 year, so we need to gauge what a student will be able to do after 1 year of our special education services. This helps with accountability and motivation for the student and for us. Here are some questions to think about under each of these sections. Starting with specific and relevant, we want to ask, is the goal clear and understandable? Is it positively stated? Is it reasonable based on the information and present levels? Is it practical and pertinent to the students' academic, social, and transition needs? And something to note here in being specific is that we don't want to list specific brand names or vendors because, as we know, students move and what we say might not be available there. So we're talking about things like Wilson, Prismo, Prolo Quota Go, things like that. So be specific, but leave out vendor names and brands. For measurable and attainable, we want to ask, does the goal include a condition of behavior and a standard criteria? And can progress on the goal be graphed? What assessment measures will be used to monitor the progress? And last, is it time sensitive? Will progress on this goal reflect sufficient growth according to the student's age and grade level, and remaining years in school? How will progress be examined? Will it be examined frequently enough to make instructional decisions? And if so, what instructional decisions will we be making based on that? Are we going to continue the goal, change it, discontinue? What decisions can we make? Now let's look at something that'll help you think through those questions. The ABCD framework is a user-friendly way to write your SMART goals. Okay, audience is the who, so the student. And the behavior clearly identifies the performance that's being monitored. You can think of this in terms of a stranger test. Can a person who does not know the student observe the desired academic behavior? It needs to represent an action that can be directly observed and measured. You can ask yourself, can you see it and can you quantify it? In short, what will the student do? Some examples include we'll count by twos to 20, we'll construct sets, we'll produce a 3-paragraph essay, so on and so forth. Conditions. So here we're talking about things like equipment, the setting, the tools that may be utilized to complete our academic behavior. This can be things like using an alternate pencil, using an adapted keyboard, word prediction, speech to text, when provided a verbal prompt, adapted grade level text, graphic organizers, other assistive technology. And degree tells us to what extent the student is expected to perform the desired behavior in order to demonstrate mastery of the skill. How are we going to know that they have met this goal? This can include things like criteria, like 4 out of 5 opportunities or the number correct. It can be frequency, such as 80% or tallies. It can be duration over a 2-week period or during a 15-minute shared reading activity. Or it can be a timestamp by the end of the first grading period, by the next annual review, every trimester, that kind of stuff. When thinking about the ABCD framework, some people just love a formula. So this is one way to look at goal writing, and this is a tool that may help you as you move forward with writing your goals. You don't need to use this by any means. It's just a tool that you might find useful. Notice this asterisk at the bottom. The items can be arranged to help the sentence make logical sense. You definitely want to make sure that the goal that you've written flows and isn't out of order. So even if you were to follow this formula, you might need to rearrange it. Over here on the screen, you've got the formula template. This is basically an adapted version of what's on this screen here. Okay, let's jump into some goals. I think we have 5 or 6. There's going to be some for elementary, there's going to be some for secondary, and we're going to hit both academic and functional. Beginning with 4th grade academics. Notice there's a key on the right-hand side because these goals are color-coded. So our audience is going to be in red, that's the student's name. The behavior we expect to see is going to be in blue, and the conditions in purple, degree in pink. This goal reads, in a classroom discussion, after completing a graphic organizer from a grade level story or informational text presented in audio format, Speakeasy will identify 2 basic similarities and 2 differences between the stories or text and 4 out of 5 opportunities over a 4-week period. So we notice that the student's name is highlighted in red. The behavior is in blue. This student will identify 2 basic similarities and 2 differences between the stories or text. And then we talk about the conditions in order to be able to do that are in purple. The conditions include being given and completing a graphic organizer or giving the text presented in an audio format. And then how often? So in 4 out of 5 opportunities over a 4-week period. You're going to notice below the goal here, you've got CAS reference, which is Colorado Academic Standard reference. And all of that is listed there. We will have the standards listed in Enrich too. It will just look differently than what's on this screen. You're also going to notice that instructional accommodations have been taken into consideration. We're not going to write them in this way, how they're shown on the screen, but they do go into the IEP in the accommodations and modifications section. And you can most certainly tie those things into the condition statements as well. And I do like that they put on the screen possible support roles for this goal, because the more people who hit a goal and reinforce a skill, the better, because the student's going to have more opportunities for practice. So they're probably going to learn it faster and learn it better. So this one has how the general education teacher can help, the learning specialist, and the speech and language pathologist. Looking at this goal, this is a goal where the OT would take the lead. There are 2 here. I'm just going to look at the first one. In a physical education class with general education peers, Zach will participate in a locomotor activity while driving his power wheelchair, 50% of class time without bumping into peers and objects, for 2 out of 3 class periods over a period of 6 months, without adult support, visual or verbal prompts, or extended time. Following our key, our audience is red, and that's Zach. Our behavior is blue. We want to see that he can engage with his power wheelchair without bumping into peers and objects. That does pass the stranger test. Anybody could see that. The conditions, he's going to be in gen ed in PE, and he is not going to have adult support or visual or verbal prompts or extended time. So they're pushing for independence for this kid. And then to what degree? Well, at least half of class time in 2 out of 3 class periods over a period of 6 months. Notice below, we've got our Colorado academic standards as reference, which will go and enrich. And we've got the instructional accommodations, which will also go into enrich in their own special section. Okay, this is for a 3rd grade student. It's a functional goal tied to an academic standard. And this might come from the mental health provider. They might take lead. It reads, during daily independent activities without prompting, Becky will self-monitor escalating frustration and place a visual reminder card on her desk when she doesn't understand what to do next in 3 out of 5 situations over a 6-week period. Our audience is Becky. She's color-coded in red. Our behavior is blue. We should be able to see her as she starts to escalate, put a visual reminder card on her desk when she doesn't know what to do. And the conditions are that this is going to be during independent activities and no prompting. And we want her to do this, our degrees in pink, we want her to do this in 3 out of 5 trials over a 6-week period. Moving into secondary. This is for an 8th grade student. And this goal reads, using a typed script that incorporates visual icons of the targeted nonverbal communication skill, such as appropriate gestures, facial expressions, posture, and body language, David will deliver an assigned classroom speech in person or on video on a preferred topic using targeted nonverbal communication skills in 3 out of 4 opportunities across 2 semesters. You'll notice the color coding is in different. See, the other thing about color coding is all of your purple doesn't necessarily have to be grouped all together. You'll notice that the purple for conditions, there's some up here and there's some after they've talked about audience and behavior. So it's okay to mix things up like that too. For Joe, he has a goal around transition in here, and that is color-coded in green. So if you see green in the manual, it's talking about a transition goal for a secondary student. So this one is linked to a post-secondary goal. And this says, in order to handle the writing demands in a degree program for logistic management, when given academic grade level writing assignments with a graphic organizer and the use of assistive technology, Joe will produce and edit a writing sample 4 out of 5 times with 75% accuracy as determined by a grade level writing rubric that includes using a checklist to edit for correct spelling, grammar, usage, mechanics, and writing with clarity and proper organization. I don't know about you, but I think that this goal is a mouthful. So I want to highlight the fact that we want to keep goals as concise as we can so they don't become too wordy. We want to make sure that we have all of the elements there, but they're also understandable for the student and for the parent. So be as concise as you can. And then this is for a student in 10th grade who has a learning disability. He also has a green section because this goal is linked to post-secondary. And this reads, in order to be prepared for the academic demands of a welding program at a technical college, when given a math assignment with 15 problems, Ethan will add and subtract fractions with unlike denominators using appropriate terms, with 90% accuracy in 2 out of 3 trials over 3 months. Notice the color coding. Our audience is Ethan. Our behavior is in blue. Anybody should be able to see him do this, adding and subtracting fractions with unlike denominators. And our conditions are purple. It's going to be that we've given him a math assignment with 15 problems. And our degree, it's going to be 90% accuracy in 2 of 3 trials over 3 months. And again, on this screen, you'll notice that green is our transition statement. are some additional considerations when we're talking about writing measurable goals. And the first one is that EEOs, which are extended evidence outcomes, are only for students with a significant cognitive impairment, which is only like 1% of our students. So it's pretty rare. And your students must qualify for them. There's a qualification process. And if your student does qualify, then you'll use the EEOs. But those still align to the student's grade level. If you are using EEOs, you must include objectives with your goals. If you're thinking that your student does qualify for the extended evidence outcomes, talk with your AD prior to any decisions regarding the EEOs. Okay, number two, think about how the goal could be generalized across teachers and settings to help the student learn it faster and retain the skill. The more a student practices and the amount of time that they put into learning a skill, the faster and more efficiently they're going to learn and use it. So, across teachers and settings really reinforces the skill. And three, things like universal design for learning, accommodations, adaptations, preferences, those can all be included in the condition statements to help a student meet their goal. And four, include the student in making their goal when that's appropriate. And at a minimum, share the goal with your student so they know the target and they can reach it. Share your progress monitoring results with them so they can track how they're doing and feel more ownership over their goals. And there are a ton of templates on Google. So all you have to do is Google those, and those templates help students write their own goals if you're interested in doing that. Sometimes I found that they don't write goals necessarily what you think they should have goals on. For the student that I'm writing his IEP right now, I asked him, "What do you want your goal to be around?" And he said, "I want to write 100 sentences." I was like, "Okay, I will help you track that goal." So I have my progress monitoring, but he chose that goal, and it somewhat aligns to my goal because I'm going to have him write paragraphs. So it is totally fine to have a student write a goal that's not necessarily one that's in their IEP. Okay, and then five, we recommend making your progress monitoring tool at the time that you write your goal. That way, you're going to know that it's easily measurable. I recently wrote a writing goal, and then I created the rubric that went with it. And when I was doing the rubric, I noticed that something didn't quite line up to how I'd written the goal, and there was a problem with the way that I'd written the goal. So I had to go back and fix that. But I avoided that pitfall for in the future. And then last one is time is valuable and finding it is very tricky. So try to build time into your schedule to take data and put it into Enrich. Enrich is the most important place to put your progress monitoring data. I'm not going to go into detail here on entering goals into Enrich, but notice that there is a job aid on this screen, which I believe was made by Annie Habercorn, and that can guide you through writing goals. But what I want you to notice here is that it does a nice job guiding you through the necessary components of a goal. The meat of the SMART goal is going to be located in the large area titled Measurable Goal, and all the other components in this section, such as the unit of measurement, will come right from the SMART goal, and they'll provide a clear link to the method of progress monitoring. So, for example, if you have 75% accuracy in 4 out of 5 trials, your progress monitoring should also be a percentage. You want those things to match. And allow Enrich to walk you through as much of this process as it can. Again, a special thanks to the Colorado Department of Education in their manual for standard aligned IEPs. That's that first link. And then the second one is a multimedia text set that came from our curriculum and instruction department. And it allows you to dive deeper into what the proficiency scales slash prioritized standards are. We definitely always are looking for a way to get the biggest bang for our buck. So you might want to explore those. If you have any follow-up questions on this material or anything else around goals or progress monitoring, feel free to connect with the SPED Coach team. We have a Schoology group where you can post the discussion questions, or excuse me, a discussion question. There's about 200 people in there so far, and we'd love to continue to grow that and build our community. We're also going to start office hours. We're going to determine times and put those in the SPED newsletter, so look for those. And then if you think that you need to dig even deeper, you might check out our SPED Coach website on our A to Z. So that concludes today. Thank you again so much for taking the time to listen in, and keep an eye out for session 3 of progress monitoring, and have a great rest of your day.